Foamstars is an odd, foamy mess, but it's oddly not terrible. Let me explain. Did you ever grow up playing Splatoon? And I don't mean the second or the third game, I mean the first one. I was one of the few people who was willing to buy a Wii U, and I gotta say, I actually really digged the Wii U quite a lot, and I enjoyed playing Splatoon on the Wii U specifically. I grew out of my Splatoon phase pretty quickly, but I understand the charm. I really loved the tablet and the way the tablet played with Splatoon. Now, what if Splatoon and Overwatch had a child that could only average a C in school? Then you would get Foamstars. Foamstars is PlayStation's attempt to capitalize on the cult following of Splatoon from PlayStation exclusive users. Personally, I see nothing wrong with this. It's no different than if they made PlayStation All-Stars to match Nintendo's Super Smash Bros., which is what they did. I mean, they're both Japanese companies after all. They're gonna have some crossover. There's gonna be some inspiration. A lot of Japanese companies do this. Along with the fact that it's not only common practice, but it's actually a really good thing when companies try to make a game based around other aspects of games that worked. It's kind of how we find a lot of their own identity and how we end up getting more options in similar genres of games by adding other elements. It's called a remix. If you haven't seen this little clip from Pirate Software, here it is.
I think we're seeing a developer that is following trends in video games more than anything else. It looks like he took a whole bunch of things that he thinks work really well in other games, and the developer decided to add them all together. This is what we call a remix. This is exactly how Blizzard Entertainment makes their games too. Every major developer makes games in that way. We see what works the best, we steal from other people, we remix those ideas together, and then we build something new out of it. And that's exactly what they've done here. We remix. That's what the industry does. We create a remix of a remix of a remix.
And if you're worried about Pirate Software, he has been in the gaming industry for over a decade. He is very well versed in what gaming is and what games are being made and how studios make them. But Foamstars is a little bit of a weird niche that Sony went for, if you get what I'm saying, considering it's the Splatoon specific game, which is already a cult following sort of thing for Nintendo. It was very particular to a very certain group of people, so it was kind of strange that they chose this niche to follow. But you know what's not a weird niche though? My channel. Go ahead and foam the subscribe button and help me get to 1,000 subs. I appreciate you. Let's get back to it. There was no particular outcry for a competitor for Splatoon, let's be honest. Even more so, it was such an interesting choice to choose Toy Logic as the developers, since they tend to be more of a support dev team for certain Square Enix projects, instead of main developers of their own IP, except for a couple of exceptions here and there. But the real question here is this game just a Splatoon copy? Not really. Like, yes, you can obviously compare the foam to the paint that Splatoon characters shoot, but they have different properties. And the differences also help with the different dynamics that the maps have for each game. A lot of Splatoon maps are built with height in mind, since wherever you paint, you can dive into the paint and climb up any vertical surface inside the paint. The foam doesn't work that way. It builds on top of each other, like foam does in real life. They also built the maps with less vertical surfaces so that rather than Splatoon maps where there's just giant towers that you can climb up, you can make towers using the foam for two tactical advantages at play. First being, you can make a hill, and it gives yourself a vantage point to shoot above from since the game is so floaty. And the second being the fact that you can build up the phone and then take cover behind it, so if you're almost gone for, you can regroup and go at it again, which is pretty remarkably smart for them to do a difference from foam to paint. I actually find this mechanic fun, and it's quite interesting to put out there. The other thing I like about this game, honestly, it's more Overwatch than it is Splatoon. Like, you have specific abilities to specific characters, and they all have a particular play strategy for their parties. You can have particular party strategies depending on what characters each character can provide. You also have a dedicated reload button, so it's like Overwatch when you run out of bullets. Unlike Splatoon, where you have to dive into the ink and recharge that way. None of the game modes are dictated by how much foam you have on the map, which is much more of Splatoon's game types anyways, so it's more about defeating your opponents, and even then, having your own version to carry the payload like in Overwatch with a giant duck. There is a version of this in Splatoon as well, I will say, but it's much closer to Overwatch than it is the Splatoon one. So it's way more of a competitor for Overwatch than it ever could be for Splatoon. They just adapted aspects of Splatoon to make a more party game vibe while feeling a lot of the soul that Overwatch can carry or any other hero shooter. Now, some of the stuff I think needs work with this game. One of the things, biggest thing, a big flaw, is the design elements of the maps and the characters. What do I mean by this? I wouldn't say that character designs in itself are wrong. They're very aesthetically pleasing. But if you look at a lot of the cutscenes, there's a deadness to the eyes I just can't shake. Like, they took these highly stylized character models and then they gave them these dead fish eyes that take away the life of their designs to a degree that I just wonder why they chose that approach. Like, they tried such stylized techniques for all these character designs, especially considering it was a dev team that works with Square Enix pretty closely, and then they just chose these super unshiny, really dead looking eyes, and I just didn't understand it. Along with that, I don't like the map design. I get that having these neon colored foams means that you need a less bright map design, but for me the colors are super muddy and drowned, and when they do use bright colors, it's only on maps that have like a techno vibe, which is not the only way to use bright colors on a map. Plus, the colors on the map almost drown out the colors of the characters, so without the outline that indicates what team that you're on, it would be really hard to see the enemies on the map in the first place. And I think the last complaint, obviously, is microtransactions. I'm of the stance that it's never good to have a microtransaction in a game, and for people that claim that microtransactions help game studios stay afloat, you can't really claim it helps people keep jobs. Between Blizzard letting go 2,900 employees, Sony laid off 900, EA laid off 5% of their staff, along with several other game studios laying people off, including Supermassive, Wild Studios, 9deck Games, and even more than that. Can studios truly justify the increasing price of games and microtransactions when they're canceling projects and letting go so much staffing in the industry? And Foamstars microtransactions are pretty egregious, with some of them being $45 for simple cosmetic packs, which is more than the cost of the game itself. This game costs $30. There are small exclusions to the rule of microtransactions, of course, like for an indie studio trying to provide a lot of value to keep the game of the cost lower, but that is an exception and not the rule, especially when the initial game costs of things are now $70. With just 1 million users buying the game, a AAA studio would get $70 million, and most AAA studios sell a whole lot more than just 1 million copies. It's just the typical. You sell a few million copies, you make close to $1 billion, that's your game for the year. But now they're making an extra 10 million per 1 million users with this new statistic of $70 a game instead of $60. But I will point out, this game in particular does cost $30, but at the same time, a hero shooter like Overwatch 2 is free. Now, you could say it's an initial cost of playing a game that is in many ways a competitor to Overwatch, but the other thing is, even though it's an initial cost, they're putting that cost there because it's exclusive to PlayStation users, so they wouldn't have too many other things to go with if they're trying to find an alternative to Overwatch or alternative to Splatoon. So it is my biggest problem with the game as a whole. Saying all that, the game itself is pretty good. It has a punchy and satisfying control system. At the same time, the controls are floaty enough to make it more of an in-air battle half the time, which is really nice, since to change the verticality from climbing on things to giving you a better jump and floatier options after all. If they continue down the path of focusing more on the shooter aspect of this game instead of the Splatoon aspect, then it has a lot of potentials to be a good PlayStation exclusive. But should you buy this game? Well, if you're not satisfied with Overwatch or Splatoon and you want to try something similar to both, then I'd say go for it. But would I recommend the game to everyone? No. It's a PlayStation exclusive game. Why would I recommend it to everybody? And plus, the game is not, I would say, ready to be released yet. There's a bit of work that needs to be done on the graphics, on the way things are designed, and just the overall polish of the game. When so many other games have released or are being released this year that would be objectively better, even if they are a different genre of game, it would be better to just wait and try something else this year. But if you think the game looks good, then go at it. I definitely wouldn't be one to judge someone for playing this game, because it's not a bad game. It's not winning any awards by any means, and it's going to be a pretty small community from the looks of it. I think the only surface level argument that doesn't hold true is that it's just a Splatoon clone. It's not, it probably will never be, but it does use a lot of similar elements, and I think it's okay to compare the two. In all honesty, if you watched this far, thank you so much, and I hope you watch another one of my videos, and until next week, I'll be seeing you.